Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Full Picture Property Podcast. So this is part of the Wealth, Success and Solidarity series, and this one is called Empowering Entrepreneurship. And we have got somebody amazing for you today, a friend of mine. She's dynamic, she's award-winning in international sales and business consultancy, a dragon slayer, a TEDx speaker, list goes on. It's Jules White from Live It, Love It, Sell It. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast, Jules.
Oh, thank you for having me, Gaz. It's really nice of you to ask me. I know you were talking about some of the guests you've got coming up, and I thought, wow, these are amazing guests. I feel very honoured.
Look, you're there with them. The stuff that you've done, the experiences, don't play yourself down. You're up there, and I'm really looking forward to this series going out because you're all big names, and you've also got big stories. So thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. And for everybody that's listening, Jules was the one that got me started up in podcasting. So you can either say thank you or you can send hate mail if you want to in the post to Jules. But thank you. I really appreciate it. So going to jump straight in. So unique human proposition and business. So I'd like you to discuss about unique human proposition within business, what we can use, how we can leverage it, the qualities that stand out in crowded market. I mean, this is you, isn't it? In a nutshell, you've set this up.
Yeah, I have. So a bit of a background, I guess, is I've been in sales for probably about 33 years now. I never change the number of years. It's my birthday tomorrow, and I think I should start upping that, shouldn't I? Because I'm getting older. So been in sales for such a long time, and obviously went through lots of different sales training, Gaz. You can imagine all the different formulas and types of selling that you can do. One of the big things what we always talked about in the 80s was the USP, your unique selling proposition. And it was a thing, and it still is today. You have to have that one thing that makes you stand out. And as I was working through Live It, Love It, Sell It and creating that methodology, I started to realize that actually the USP is no longer that. It's actually now UHP. It's the unique human proposition. Because in all this noise and all this, there's so much, isn't there, going on now in this world of business, so many people involved. The one thing that is your greatest asset that helps you to stand out is you. There's no other you on the planet. So I started to think about UHP. How do we start to then use that in business? You know, what makes it special? And what makes it special is us really understanding that asset. Who are we? You know, what is it we bring that's different to somebody else? Where's our experience and our skill set? Our isms, Gaz, as I call them. You know, maybe the way we talk, the words we use, the way we dress. Those things are memorable things that help us to connect as humans. And stories, the biggest one, I guess, is, you know, our stories are unique. No one else has got our stories and they don't tell them the way we do. So putting all of that together, then I started to create a program called the UHP program. So I start to teach it. I start to put it into different modules and what does that look like and how can I pass that on to other people? That's UHP right there.
And I love it because you're not going to be a robot anymore. You
No.
Instead of following a script, you're following your passion. You're being yourself. You're showing people your characters. Like you said, the isms. I think it's brilliant, and I think it's a good way to get across that how people can move along within business, because it can be tough in business, can't it?
It's very tough. And I think there's a lot of people that will tell you about your uniqueness and the storytelling side of things. But often what they don't do is show you how to do it and start to help you to be able to utilize those skills in your business. And that's why I wanted to create something that just went that bit further. So I'm not just going to talk about UHP. I'm going to teach you how to do it and what it means to you, you know. So it was lovely. It was lovely creating it all. And it was so valuable, I thought, at the end of the day.
Well, I think it's amazing, especially in a confusing world that everybody can tell you, you need to be this way, you need to be that way, when actually you don't.
Yes. That's such a good point as well, because I remember starting my Live It, Love It, Sell It business in 2017, Gaz, which feels like such a long time ago now. And one of the biggest issues I had was I wrote in a corporate way. I spoke in a corporate way because I'd come out of that world. And so my language and the way I wrote was the same as probably many other people. And Jules was lost. So now when you start looking at what I do, when I do my posts, I write literally as I would speak. My book, Live It, Love It, Sell It, which I know we've talked about, that is written as I speak. And people say when they read it, I can hear you when I read the book, you know, sitting on my
Yeah.
shoulder. And I feel like that's the essence of UHP, is that you suddenly actually, you are really you in everything you then do in terms of your communication and your comms. And that's part of it. It's lovely. It's lovely.
No, it's really good. And I will admit that the book is just here. If people can't see it, I'll get it out. For those that are, those that are listening on the podcast, just have a quick look on YouTube. There we are. Live it, love it, sell it. You see my post-it notes in there to remind me. Excellent book. Keeps you safe, keeps you sane, makes you love yourself, makes you understand yourself.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it gets you more sales because you're relatable. You're
Yes.
relatable.
Yeah.
You're you. You're not a robot. You're not coming across as if you're trying to be misleading. You can just come across and then chat to somebody. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it.
It's
Thank you.
very true. Very true.
I'm going to try and change tack now, because something that I really, really like is that you actually went on the Dragon's Den and you won. And you won. And Peter Jones actually invested, didn't he?
He
So I'm
did.
really intrigued, really intrigued. And I think the big question that I've got is, how was Peter Jones in person? Before we even talk about that, how was Peter Jones?
Very tall. I think he's
Yeah,
about 6'7" is I think is how tall he is, around that. He's a very tall guy. When I was on Dragon's Den, he was much younger. It was way back in 2005, so it was only the second series. What's lovely is that he's still actually doing Dragon's Den, so it helps me to be able to still talk about it, which is fabulous. I met him, I think, twice more after we'd filmed, but it was very brief. And he was absolutely lovely. But the big problem really was that you got handed over to his people. So you didn't really get Peter Jones once you'd left the den like you were hoping you might. And that was a shame. I think that was a big shame. And maybe it's different today and there's different dragons. But for me, I just felt like that was such a shame, because he heard my pitch. He invested in me in terms of the offer. I think he got what I was trying to do. And then when I was handed over, things didn't really run as smoothly in that sense. So it was a shame.
Well, he's invested in your UHP, which we just
And
discussed.
that's what I talk about a lot, because when you look at the business I took in there, Gaz, it was a very early startup business called Truly Madly Baby. I was selling baby products. I just had my baby. So Sam was 3 months old when I started it, which people think I was crazy. So I set this little business up. We loved Party Plan back then, going into people's homes, having a bit of a coffee and a glass of wine and showing products. But nobody was doing it with baby products, which I thought was crazy. So I had this really great captured market. I started it in the March. I was pitching in the den in the May. So literally I'd done 2 months worth of this business. £2,700 I turned over, doing about 10 parties. It was so early that I often say to people, what was he really investing in? Because there wasn't a business really that had actually started at that point. And I do say it must have been me and my passion and my vision. And ultimately, as you say, my UHP, something about that caught his eye. And he felt like we could do something together from there. So it was lovely that was the reason. But obviously the story was slightly different when you look at what happened next.
Yeah, I sort of get it why they've got to pass it on to their team, because if they've got lots of things that they're investing in, then it's
Yeah.
great. But again, it must have been slightly deflating, disappointing that you speak to him a couple of times when you think, great, I'm in now. I've got Peter Jones, and he can walk in front of me, massive as he is, and help you out.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously the ultimate story is in my TEDx talk. So you can really get what happened sort of after the den in that talk. But we shook hands on the telly like a lot of people do, but we never actually completed the contract. So it wasn't the end of the business by any means. We went on and I ran the business for another 3 years after the den. And the exposure was incredible, Gaz. You can't take away the fact that you'd been on the telly. In those days, it was BBC Two, so it's probably a slightly smaller audience. It's BBC One now, so it's even bigger now. But I think that exposure definitely helped, but it never made me an overnight success like some people think it does, I still had to work really hard to build the business.
And that is, you've hit the nail on the head with one thing, which is you've got to work really hard. But it's great
Yeah.
that he's invested in you there. And one thing I really love about you is the positivity. The positivity.
Yeah.
So right there, you've just looked at the pros and the cons. Even though Peter Jones wasn't there, it's like, oh no, there's still some really good positives that come from it. The
Yeah.
exposure.
Definitely. Yeah. And I mean, I ran the business for 3 years. I took on another business partner. Year three, we turned over £1 million in a very small boutique type business. You know, I am thrilled that we got that far. And also we had consultants doing the parties. There was 432 consultants across the UK doing Truly Madly Baby parties. And
Wow.
so, you know, to get that far and build that big, really from my back dining room when I first started it with £5,000, you know, it was really amazing. We had inquiries as well from America, Australia and Europe to actually start going into global territory. So, you know, this could have been pretty big, but sadly it did fall quite flat on its face. And ultimately that was because I was in the business and not working on the business. And there's a really valuable lesson, I think, for the listeners.
So would you say the number one mistake that you could make in business would be working in the business and not on the business?
For me, it was in that situation. And that was because I had a business partner who I thought was perhaps looking at the on the business things, and that wasn't happening. And instead of taking responsibility of that and noticing that, I was there recruiting, training, changing the catalogue, sourcing products, going out and delivering parties still myself.
Really?
With, you know, with the tiny baby. It was incredible when I look at, I was probably working 20 hours a week, 7 days a week, sorry, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week on
Yeah.
this business as a new mum. And when I look back, I think, that's crazy stuff,
I don't know how you've
crazy.
done it. I don't know how you
And
do it.
and I did it because it was always a joy. It was always such fun. It was exhilarating, but that doesn't make the money that you then need to run the business at that growth and you know, at that level. We grew so fast, Gaz. When you grow very fast in business, you've got to start understanding the dynamics that have to change. So yeah, there's lots of sort of things you can explore around that when you're chatting it on something like this podcast. So
Oh, I know. So my day-to-day job, so I'm a manager, engineering manager, with various different teams. We do a lot to do with quality. So a lot of my job revolves around quality, which is all to do with this business resilience part. There are a lot of people that do come to me and talk about how you keep it resilient. So as you mentioned that you failed, and thank you for being honest about that it failed. Business resilience and entrepreneurship isn't that easy.
no.
There's a lot of challenges, a lot of things to discuss about your mental resilience as well as the crucial roles that are required. Can we talk about how you've learned from that and what you're doing like now in your current businesses to make sure that you're resilient?
Yeah, I think it's a great topic because there's kind of business resilience and then there's personal resilience. So it's there's two things. The business is about the business plan and the business strategy and making sure that you're focusing on the right things. That's the boring practical stuff. The mental side of it, the personal side of it, is about knowing you can actually survive when you get knocked back and when you get rejected, because that's the hard bit. We don't do very well as humans when something goes wrong or when someone says no, or even when we lose things. It's actually devastating. I think for me, what happened when I lost the business, because ultimately I was left overnight with no business anymore after all my success, and I was left with a bankruptcy on top of my head. And for me, that was the personal side of that was devastating. I was ashamed, completely and utterly ashamed. I was angry with myself, ashamed. I was embarrassed. There were so many things that was going on. What I learned, I think, when I look at it, I actually created a talk about it, which is called bounce back ability.
Love it.
Which we love that word. I think it was used in football once, and so
Soccer AM.
somebody, yeah, and somebody turned round to me not long after I lost the business, and they said, "Yeah, but Jules, you've got bounce back ability," and I was a bit like, "Oh, I actually quite like that. I'm gonna take that and use it." So I created an acronym of BOUNCE, because it's a bit too long to do bounce back ability. And I started to break down those letters into those key things that we need to be resilient. And at the time of losing the business, I was discovered I was pregnant. I then found out my mum had breast cancer. I then lost my baby. I then lost my marriage. And obviously I just lost my business. And that happened literally within 10 months. So you can imagine how I
That's a
was
tough
feeling
time.
at,
That
at
is a
that
very, very
moment.
tough time. Yeah.
And I needed, my husband had gone, and he was still seeing, obviously, my son, and Sam was 3, I think, at the time. But I still had to say, I've got a beautiful son, and I now need to get on, because I've got to get a job, and I've got to earn some money, and I've got to make sure he's okay. And that was like the focus, I think. But the bounce piece was all about, the B was breathe. So it's about saying, I need to stop for a minute. I'd not stopped for all that time, Gaz, building this business. I haven't stopped once to see
Wow.
how I was, to see
Yeah.
how I was feeling, checking in. So the B was breathe. The O was opportunities. Actually, what were my opportunities? So the positivity bit. The U was understanding, because if you don't understand what's actually happened to you and also what you want to do, then how can you even make a plan? The C was about choice, and the fact that actually we always have a choice. Although we don't feel like it at the time, we still have a choice, and mine was to go and get a job. And then the E was about energy. And the energy piece was about the people I had around me and the people I didn't need around me. And that was going to be incredibly important for me to carry on and build again, and find out who I was again. I needed to reinvent myself in a way.
That's amazing. Definitely gone through tough times and definitely got bounce back ability. And it's
Bounce back
great that you
ability.
had that bounce back ability. And I'm thankful. Can you remember the person that said that to you? Because if they
I,
planted that into your head, and
I
then you've
know.
done this because of it.
It's incredible, isn't it? And often these people are anonymous, but you just have this memory of somebody said that to you once. It might have been an old consultant from Truly Madly Baby, I think, probably wrote and just said something nice, because there was just a handful who were lovely to me. There was also a lot of people who weren't, because they were
Yeah.
angry with me. But that's another story. But I think it's, you capture that, and then to be able to stick it into part of my TEDx, to talk about it when I'm public speaking, to do online virtual talks. It's brilliant, because I know every time someone's walking away with something from that talk that changes how they go on forward. So yeah, I love it. I love that particular subject.
Yeah. And I love that. And I love that people are saying that to you, or they're taking something away, because
Yeah.
I've found personally, and my business partner as well, Ron, who's 60, in his 60s. I'm not going to say how old because I'll get in trouble. So, yeah, and I will get in trouble. Lovely guy, but again, there's some struggles that you have. There's times when you get let down and you get so deflated, and quite often we bounce off each other. And luckily, we've got each other to go through it. So the bounce
Yeah.
back ability, I love it, that you've gone through something that was definitely tough times.
Yeah.
Appreciative that you've been open and honest about that. But if anybody's listening, just make sure, if you're worried about this. So if anybody's worried about their own bounce back ability, just please play this. Reach out to Jules.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
definitely something
Connect,
to
and
connect.
definitely, because it, I think I listened to not my own podcast, but a podcast I was listening to the other day when I was walking, Gaz. It was brilliant. And the guy said, what you have to remember is that you learn from everything that goes wrong. And he said he did this survey on people to say, if you could go back and change something, how many of you would? And there was such a small amount of people who would actually change stuff, because the majority said, actually, I wouldn't change it because I learned so much about it and I'm such a better person for it. And I have to say, that's massive. That's a massive part of my journey. Is I couldn't do what I do today if I hadn't gone through all the things that I went through on my journey.
True. It is all true. I think you've got to fail sometimes to then move forward yourself, especially as a person, your mental
Exactly.
resilience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you are an award-winning international sales and business consultant.
It's posh, isn't it?
Gosh, it's good, yeah. So you like talking about the importance of sales and customer service. So people buy from people that they trust. You write about it a lot. You talk about it a lot. Can you offer us some guidance or something that can help people out, the listeners that are there right now? that are either struggling or they're contemplating being an entrepreneur, just to assist them moving forward?
Yeah, and I think the book helps with it a lot because of the way that, and that was a bit of an accident, even the way that came together, that book. It was lovely because the live it, love it, sell it as a whole methodology is all about how I see sales. And I see it as it starts with you. And unless you know who you are, love what you stand for, understand exactly what it is you offer, how can you even start selling? So it's all about this starting right at the foundation of what sales really is, which is ultimately you. Once you get that bit, then you can start saying, okay, so who do I now want to sell to? Who is that customer? And one of the biggest problems we have in business is we're often selling to or trying to sell to the wrong customer, the person who doesn't share our values, the person who doesn't see our value. It's so common, but we're desperate because we need to make that money that then means we can run our businesses. And so we're always firefighting when we look at it in that way. So whilst I will just make sure I say this, we need money to survive in life. So we run our businesses to make money. Fact. But if we approach sales in a desperate way that's all about money first, it's much, much harder. If we start to put the people at the front of sales and all the things we just talked about in live it, love it, sell it, then what happens is we start to connect. And we don't even realize sometimes how easily we connect because of showing up with our UHP and with the message that's very clear and unique and real, as opposed to this scripted stuff that all of us see through and don't even like. So there's this whole piece around checking in. Who am I? Who's my customer? How am I going to show up? And if you look at that as a really simple format, then you can start to be visible in the world of business, in the social media, in networking, wherever you're going to show up. And every time there's this consistency. And when you show up, they go, that's Gaz. I remember Gaz, because you've shown up properly as you. So they recognize you. And then they decide, when I need this, I'm going to go and speak to Gaz. And most of my business will come from people who have either been recommended, which is amazing, or they've watched for quite some time, and then they had a need and they knew exactly where they wanted to come. I had a lady, she said, I've been following you for 2 years. I'm ready to work with you.
That's really good. I call that dropping the breadcrumbs,
Yeah, it's another
Dropping the
way of putting it.
breadcrumbs.
I like that.
If you get low engagement, it doesn't matter. You're just telling people who you are and what you're doing. And the
Yeah,
right people are going to be there,
yeah.
which is great, which sort of goes on to my next question, which is building a network and building a community. I mean, you foster a really good community. How did that come about?
Well, I think COVID helped a lot, to be honest, with my community building. And probably there's a lot of people out there who would say the same, because it was the only thing we could do when COVID hit. We couldn't go out and meet people anymore. So I think one of the things I did is I started a membership. I had a free group on Facebook. I was in various networking groups that went online. I'd started to do virtual speaking. So everything sort of went onto this online space. And I think actually that was a massive opportunity where I built quite a good, strong community of like-minded people. And then from there, once we came back out of COVID, I continued my speaking, which is part of my sort of portfolio of products that I offer, if you like. I sort of still did my one-to-one coaching, but then I started doing more corporate coaching. So then I was starting to get into more of a corporate environment, which is really interesting, because I want to just touch on this. It earns you more money, but you then start to lose that community and connection piece, because it's a bit more about money and longevity than it is about the right people and the right values. And that I find difficult, because I do corporate work. I want to do corporate work, but I'm still always aware that I want to work with the right companies. I still have that discipline, if you like, of who I work with. And that building community piece is all around those same things: values, sharing values, and people who just get you. You just know when you meet someone, I think you just get a feeling, like a gut feeling that this is my type of person.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's great. And I do think the two go hand in glove. So when you're saying money doesn't, it's not necessarily putting the money at first. Sometimes you just to continue working with the correct people, you've got to put money first for a limited time. And it's a balance.
It
But
is.
I love
It
that. And
is.
it's good to hear
Yeah.
that you're working with the people that you want to work with.
Yeah, I think I'm far more selective than I've ever been, and that's because I've now built the type of portfolio, I suppose, that allows me to do that. And that's all again about a bit of strategy in my business as well. But I think there's also one other thing just to top up the community piece. Don't think about building a community as building your customer CRM and the people who are going to buy from you. Don't think of it like that, because some people in your community will never buy directly from you, but they will be your marketing team and they will be the advocates who go out and tell people about you. So be really smart with the whole community thing. It's really interesting. You know, people think I've built a community, I'm going to sell to them all. Don't get caught in that trap.
I totally agree. And I've been part of a few communities, and the communities I've been involved in have been a sort of collaborative community. We've not worked in the same niches, we've not worked in the same areas, but you go there to support each other within small businesses, and the small businesses will support each other. And what we try to do afterwards, if somebody says, well, I actually want, say, a painter or decorator, well, I know a painter and decorator, here's his number. By the way, I've seen the work he's done. And that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
I've got a small group of people in Lincoln that I do that for already. Some being very successful, some being startups, and it works and it's brilliant, and nobody knows about
Yeah.
it.
No, that's good. It's good. And I think this is the important part of this human connection stuff. You know, that's how we operate as humans, isn't it?
Yeah, I say nobody knows about it. They know about it now, but it's not advertised because I'm just
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, brilliant. So that's your live it, love it, sell it community, isn't it?
Yeah.
People, can people still join that?
Yeah. I've got a Facebook group called the Sales Hub. So that's still open and I'm still doing things in there from time to time. I do my podcast, as you know, so I'm a
Yeah,
podcaster too. So I've just started to do more of that again. I'm doing my speaking, and obviously there's then this little new project that I think we're going to talk about at the end of the podcast. So
yeah, yeah, it's good. So we'll save that. So
yeah,
keep listening.
yeah.
Ah,
That's the cliffhanger. You've got to keep
cliffhanger
listening, guys.
is the cliffhanger. Let's talk about your TEDx stuff now. So public speaking.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I've got more than 100 people that work for me, and sometimes even I find it tough to get up in front of them. And I do it every week without fail. They all come into a room. I do enjoy it, but there are certain times that you've got to discuss things and you just don't want to get up and discuss those things. But your TEDx, that must have been mental, because how many thousand people were there?
So it was Brighton Dome. So there's actually a capacity of 1,600 people in there. So I
Yeah.
think they were fairly full capacity that day. So 15 to 1,600 people were watching my TEDx that day. Yes, yes.
And you got up on stage in front of them all, um, going down, telling them all about your life story. I think it's amazing that you've done that.
There is a little story behind it, because with TEDx, there's different formats. It's a franchise, so there's quite strict rules to how you run and have a license for TEDx. So you'll see them around the country, and people might have a TEDx where you've got an audience of 100 people, and other people will have the big Brighton Dome audience, which is one of the largest in Europe. And I met the curator of TEDx Brighton at an event that we were both speaking at. And he said to me, we have such a lot in common, let's connect. And at the time, I did not say to him ever, I would love a TEDx talk. And I did really want a TEDx talk. You know, it was like, how cool would that be? But I
Yeah.
never said to him, because I thought, he's not going to pick me if I ask him for one. It's just not going to work. And then 7 days before TEDx Brighton 2018, I had my ticket to go and sit in the audience. And he texted me, and we'd been in touch about sales and marketing stuff, and it was great. We had a lovely relationship. And he said, you have 7 days. Are you in? And that was the message.
7 days.
You have 7 days. Are you in? And I thought to myself, what does he mean? And then I realized he meant to have a TEDx talk at this event the following week. So I just put yes. And I thought afterwards, what am I ever going to do? What am I going to talk about? I've got no time to prep. this is going to be the most scary thing I'll ever do in my life, kind of thing. And 7 days later, I stepped out onto the stage at Brighton and I told my story, because that was all I could do. I couldn't really prep a full-on talk per se. So I told my story, and I had 14 minutes to do so in front of 1,600 people.
You would never tell that you had 7 days to prep that. You wouldn't.
Well, that's very sweet of you.
No, no, it's good. What I love though is that when you've been open and honest about things, about how important it is to tell your story, and
Massive, yeah,
what that
yeah.
meant to you. So, I mean, personal growth must have been amazing.
Yeah, and also when you do a talk, storytelling is critical in a talk, because it's how we connect to an audience. But the other part of public speaking, and if you're a keynote speaker, you've got to know what the audience are going to walk away with from your talk. It's the most important thing. Public speaking isn't actually about you, it's about your audience. And this is the big thing. So to want this TEDx, if any of the listeners are saying, I really want a TEDx, you should always be thinking, well, actually, what do I want to share with the audience that's going to change something for them, not me wanting to share my story because my story is great. And so to just share my story the way I did, I was panicking, thinking, actually, I've also got to make sure the audience gets something from this story, because otherwise I'm just telling them my story and so what. And actually what we were able to think about, and I say we because my son at the time, who was super young, he was about 13, I think, he sat with me and I said, I know what I want to say. I know what I want the message to the audience to be, but I don't know how to end it. And he said, I've got it, Mum. I know exactly what you need to do. And he wrote it down for me. And he said, it's a post you did the other day, Mum. I saw it. This is what you should say. And the finish was around closing your eyes and imagining something you're really scared to do. You want to do it, but you're super scared. And then I want you to all open your eyes again. This is what I said to the audience. And on the screen, my little slide said, will it be one day, or is this day one? And that's how I ended my TEDx. Now, that was Sam. That was my son, Sam, who wrote the end of my TEDx talk. How amazing is that? He must have been, so 2018. What was he in 2018? 13. He was 13 years old. Yeah.
Good on him. Well
and
done.
It was wonderful. And so there were other bits I put in for the audience in the talk, but that last bit was all about, what are you going to go and do now you've listened to this, kind of thing. And it was magic. Honestly, it was so magic, considering it was like 7 days to prep. I was so happy to do it.
Yeah, I again love that. I think the biggest takeaway from that is how you make your audience feel. How are you going to impact somebody's lives? And this leads on to sales as well. Everything that you say within your book and within your communities is, how can you impact somebody for the better? And that'll just make them want to work with you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the big thing in sales is step into the world of your customer so that you show them that you understand what they want to buy, not what you want to sell them. It's got to be the only way that you approach this.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I saw something recently from Jordan Belfort. So he's got the famous film, Wolf of Wall Street.
Yes.
But when you actually listen to him separately, he says similar things to what you've said just then. You need to make sure that you're relating to your audience.
Yeah.
Obviously, he does it a different tact, completely different tact to what you do. But it's just the same. It's just the relatability to your audience, but making sure you're selling to the right person.
I'm a super patient salesperson because I just don't believe in pushy. I can't be doing with it. It's been a tactic used and trained into me all my life, and I won't entertain it. I'm like, patience is the key for me, because people will come when it's right and it's the right time for them, and you're selling the right thing for them and you're the right person, it will come. And I do believe in patience. And most sales trainers just don't even understand how I can say that as a sales coach. But I will.
I don't think you'll dislike it, but sometimes I know you won't dislike this because you do sales the correct way, but sometimes I don't like the neuroeconomics of things. I don't like the reason that people are getting in there and they'll say the same. I saw somebody say the same story and they cried at the same point. And when somebody went and approached them afterwards to talk about their story, it was, get to the back of the room and buy my product. They didn't want to engage afterwards, which to me just says They're not a people person. They're just
Yeah,
there to work on neuroeconomics. They're there to get into your psyche, to think that this person is relatable. But ultimately, they want your money at the back.
yeah.
You're different, though, Jules. So that's why I'm
Oh,
happy to say that, because you are. You've just been amazing with all the stuff, and I mean, it's about 3 years ago, I think, that we first connected, and that's when you helped with my podcast, and that's when I got your book. And for 3 years, I still refer to it, and I still go in there to understand me as a person, but also just make sure that I'm being a good person when I'm engaging. So yeah, thank
nice.
you.
Thank you. No, thank you, because it's important. You know, you're the reader. So for me, that's brilliant.
It's really good, and it's helped me. It's helped me, and it's helped me with the future of where I'm going to go within my business, choosing the right business partner. So there's people that I have aligned with in the past, and then afterwards I've decided, not necessarily that they're bad people, but we're just not going to work together. We're just not
No,
there.
no.
It's helped me form the way that I'm happier myself working.
And
Um,
that and there's a courage attached to that, Gaz, when you start to look at who you want to collaborate and work with, and then ending some of those relationships, because like you say, it's not personal. It's not always personal. It's just that in a business sense, it's not going to work. And
yeah,
there's a courage in that. And I think everybody should be aware of that it's actually okay to be courageous in business.
yeah, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't. I still think about it sometimes of why I'm not working with them, and are they okay with it? And I think they came to the same conclusion sometimes, but it's still they're my friends.
Yeah,
And you
exactly.
become friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas there's other ones that have been very corrupt, but I'll a different time.
We've all met some of those. We've all met
Oh
some
yeah.
of those.
Oh God, it's mental. It's a mental world out there, and that's the whole
Yeah,
premise of this is the wealth, success, and solidarity is to bring it out there to show that it's not that easy. There are some people out there that aren't good. Don't chase the shiny penny, as you said. We often say that within my little close circle that we got. Don't chase the shiny penny, but help people out.
yeah,
It's scary what
yeah,
people will do.
it
And
is.
I've seen people fleece. I've seen somebody lost. Well, they joint ventured with somebody, and they never put any money in because they were supposed to be the expertise. They never had any expertise. £50,000 lost. £50,000, the entire life savings. So
Yeah.
please don't. If you're listening and you're thinking about it, don't chase a shiny penny. Sometimes it is too good to be true. Yes, sometimes do follow it, but don't. It's not the shiny penny. It's the opportunity and the people that you work with.
Yeah, think about the bigger picture of it, I think is the key, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some good things out there. A
Yeah.
lot of good things.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
the future is bright. Looking at innovation in business as well for the future. What do
Yeah.
you think the landscape's going to change to and look like in the future?
I think I'm a little bit scared in a way about the future of sales, because there's so much now which is being driven down an AI route. And I think AI is an amazing subject. I think it's not one to be feared, but I think it's a very dangerous place, and it can just be used in the wrong way. I think if we could create AI hand in hand with human in the right ways, then I think it will be super exciting for us in the future. But with sales, I'm seeing lots of AI tools to create pitches, to create conversations, to create cold call messages. And they might well be quite clever, but you can tell straight away what they are. And so you're taking the human out of this whole sales process. I want to think that in my lifetime, we still need humans to sell. So that's what are my biggest wishes, that however much we develop in tech, which we should and we can, and it's lovely, that we just keep the two working hand to hand. I would love that. Some people think I'm ridiculously silly thinking we will, but that would be my wish, I think. And you may well stand out in the crowd if you still sell as a human rather than through some of these other routes, to be honest. So
That's what I was just about to say. Everybody's shifting to the right. You shift to the left.
yeah, yeah.
You'll stand out and
Um,
help. I do think AI is good, but there are concerns.
Yeah, there are concerns. And there's a great friend of mine who still uses, he calls it lumpy mail. So he'll send
Yeah,
things like a card that he's actually painted. He paints these cards himself. He'll put you a handwritten message in it. Then you'll have this little QR code to scan. And when you scan it, you get a little sound bite, which he's recorded for you. And for me, that's combining all of the amazing tech we have with the human. It's super clever, and it stands out. It stands out a mile, and you remember it. So always just be thinking about the creative side of how we can show up, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what AI will miss, and it's not going to get there. And also, if you put rubbish in, you're going to get rubbish out with
Yeah,
AI.
yeah,
You
definitely.
can't just second guess at it. So there's a lot of people out there that are teaching courses saying AI can do all this for you. It can, as long as if you've got the background, the foundational knowledge to then put in to get the best out of what you're going to do. But it still takes it from the human. You've got that human interface.
Exactly, yeah. And that, my friend, I must mention, is Angus Grady, because I think if you are listening and you look him up, he's such a great little advocate for that human stuff. So yeah, check him out.
Yeah, I love it. Lumpy mail. I'll
Lumpy
make sure.
mail.
So we talked about the future stuff there.
Yes,
You've got some future stuff. Can we talk
yes.
about? Can I? In fact, I'm going to let you name it. It's one of the best names I've ever heard. And as soon as you hear it, it's one of those that you think, I think I know what that's about.
So it's called Floofspill. And anybody who has a dog, particularly, although floof can be referring to lots of furry animals, but dogs particularly, if you're a dog person, we call our dogs the floofs. I have 2 toy miniature schnauzers who are amazing. And what I really wanted in the portfolio was I'd got to a point where I needed to have what I call a joy project. So not something that I put myself under pressure to make loads of money with, but something that I just love doing alongside the work where I'm working pretty hard and using my brain power. And again, think about this, it's retail. And where did I start in Dragon's Den? Truly Madly Baby, which was retail, selling baby products. So now my son's 19. He's a bit big now. I'm not really into the baby market anymore, but I have dogs and I adore my dogs and I am a dog owner. And the floofs have to be represented in the online space, not just as a little shop, which I'm loving picking some fabulous products for, but as a community. So we have Floof Friends, so you can fill in the form on the website and send in your dog. They get featured on Instagram and on the website. We've got Floof Favorites, where we're looking at dog-friendly products and services. And the most exciting thing, which is what I said to you before we went on air, Gaz, my problem is I start going off on a tangent with these things. We did the branding for Floofspill, which I love. I just think it's fab. You can look it up, but come and follow us anyway. And Gaz will give you the links. And in that, my designer made a pattern, all right? As in, a background pattern of little dog bones and the FV of Floofspill, bit Louis Vuitton, but FV. And all of a sudden, I said to myself, I could create an exclusive collection of Floofspill products, all branded in this pattern. So blankets, dog towels, mats for under their bowls, all in the Floofspill branding colours. How about
Really
that?
good. You can
So,
see how passionate you are, and I love it. And I'll definitely share this. So give me the links afterwards, give me
yeah,
QR codes, give me whatever you need, and we'll do it.
I
And in
will.
fact, during this, when it's going out, anybody that's watching this live on YouTube, or say live, anybody that's watching this on YouTube, there will be pictures. So there's going to be pictures.
Yes. Yeah, amazing. And so it's just fun. I'm under no pressure with myself to earn millions. But if this just takes off and earns a little bit of money but gives me great joy, honestly, I recommend everyone has a little joy project in their portfolio when they're working as an entrepreneur.
That's really good. And that's a really good top tip to finish on. Would you say that is your number one top tip?
I've got lots of top tips, Gaz. That's a bit of
Okay.
it's a bit of a good question, that one, isn't it? But I do think I've come to realise this is my 7th year in my second business, and this has been an amazing journey and a much more sensible journey than my last effort. I think there is real mileage in having some joy in what you do, because it is the stability that just keeps us going and motivates us. So if your main core business is stressful sometimes, it probably will be, but just think about what else you could do that just gives you real joy, that connects back in. And for a sales coach to have a retail website is pretty amazing, because I'm walking the walk, so it connects beautifully back to live it, love it, sell it. So.
Oh, that's amazing. And on that bombshell, thank you very, very much for just coming onto my podcast. You're big in this industry. People can reach out to you, can't they?
Yes, yes. I'll give you the links anyway, but I'm usually on LinkedIn for sure. So if you connect on LinkedIn, you could probably find everything else you need on there. So Jules White.
Amazing. Live it, love it, sell it.
Yes,
It's also I like to put credit where credit's due. Award winning, international award winning.
it is. Thank you,
TEDx
Gary.
speaker. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for
As
having
usual,
me.
everybody, please like, follow, subscribe, because there'll be lots of things coming out. I'm going to be doing some sound bites of everything we've discussed today. So just some of the key pertinent points, the key stuff within business from an expert, which is Jules White. So thank you very much, Jules, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you.